What about the therapy, Frank? Like, as a, I feel like therapy and counselling and these kind of things becoming much more common and talked about these days, much more normalised, to get stuff out that builds up inside of every person. We all go through things, finding people to talk to in that kind of sense. As a Christian, do you think it's important to have a therapist that is also of the same faith or a Christian as well?
It's a really good question. It's probably partly down to whatever issue it is that you want to put on the table and talk about. For me, it's important that... So I recently, last year, spent some time with a therapist. So rather than trying to answer that question conclusively, I'll just say what I put on the table. So in talking to a therapist, it was after going through all the stress of COVID, being involved in another church's fallout, a mess, and then my daughter's health descent and having to go to Germany to get her surgery. I just came out of that wrecked.
It was a bit of a roller coaster there.
It was a roller coaster, and I'm still working my way through that and the ups and downs of coming out of that and realizing the effect that those years have had on me. So last year I did spend some time, when we got back from Germany, I spent some time with a therapist, and thankfully there's a trust in Hamilton that offers free therapy to families that have children who are going through medical trauma.
All right.
So it was really, really helpful. But I stipulated to them that the therapist didn't need to be a Christian, but they needed to understand spirituality and the centrality of God to my life, and the centrality of prayer to my life, the centrality of prayer space, that deep spiritual part of who I am. They had to at least be conversant in that, to not have to have me bring them up to speed with that part of my life. So they didn't have to believe exactly the same things, but they had to understand it and not be freaked out by it, and not have to have me educate them on it. That was really important. So that I was able to talk about prayer, and he wasn't freaked out by it. He understood it. Because that for me was an important part of being able to move through it, being able to engage in prayer, and to be able to say, hey, I'm really struggling to pray. I'm really struggling to find that quiet space. Can we talk that through? And he was able to do that. So I think finding someone who is conversant, not necessarily someone who believes the same stuff, I think is important, yeah.
So if somebody's maybe gone through something bad at church, maybe there's been a huge offence that's happened with them and somebody at their church, or maybe a pastor, do you think that it's important that the person just only is able to understand the context but not necessarily holds the same beliefs? Yeah,
or in that space, probably someone who understands power dynamics, someone who understands when trust is, what goes on internally when trust is broken, someone who is again is conversant in the foundation of that issue, not necessarily someone who believes exactly the same stuff. Now, therapy is about trust. It's about being able to open up to someone. So if it is important for you that that person really does believe in God, believes in Christ, holds the same value system, in order for you to be able to open up and to share and to be able to be vulnerable and to then be able to listen to the therapist, then find that. Therapy is mostly about that ability to be vulnerable, open up, and trust the other person, and for them to be able to hold you in that space. So the trust element is the most important. So if it is important to you that the other person is a Christian, then yeah. For me, it wasn't entirely important that they held exactly the same beliefs. They just needed to be able to converse with the stuff that I find important.
I guess it also depends on to what level, I don't know if level is the right word because I'm not obviously an expert or authority in any of this field, right? But you've got kind of the spectrum of like counseling, spiritual direction, therapy, psychotherapy, a psychologist, people that make diagnoses around mental health disorders. There's sort of, and doctors of these types of things. Like we were talking about this yesterday out in the office, and someone was joking about being like, well, I definitely wouldn't get a non-Christian plumber to fix my pipes, so I need a Christian therapist as well. But, at some point in there, like when you go to the doctor, I don't ever inquire about whether my doctor is of the Christian faith or... somewhere along there, for me, I don't know, that understanding maybe it changes,
Yeah.
or it's an interesting changing dynamic.
Yeah, so when we say therapy, my assumption is we're talking about someone that you're just sitting down with and you're talking through life. If we're talking about
Like a medical,
like a medical thing, then that person doesn't need to be Christian. They need to understand how the brain works and how my body works and possibly the right medications. Like if we're at the point where we're starting to talk about
So it's kind of
the
stages,
possibility of
yeah.
medication, I don't need that person to be Christian.
Thanks for your thoughts, Franks. Franks.
Me, myself, and I.
Sounds like someone might need to see. Could be a diagnosis on the way.